Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement. It's Wednesday, and I think you might know what that means. It's time for another midweek mini mail call. We're up to number 16 here, if you can believe it. And before I get started, I just want to remind my viewers that, as usual, in the description below, there are links to jump to specific sections of the mail call videos in case you're tired of that one section you're watching and you'd like to skip over it to another section. In addition, if you've sent stuff into the channel for mail call and you haven't seen it yet on the channel, it's probably because either I haven't opened it yet, there's a pretty big pile of stuff over here, which I will be getting to in the near future, or I have turned it into a standalone video, which I just haven't released yet. Sometimes if I'm in the middle of a bunch of projects and things like that, I try to release those videos together, and then I might use those little standalone one-off videos as sort of a filler. Now, just because filler doesn't mean it's like less important to me or whatever. It just means that it doesn't interrupt the flow of another project series of videos. So anyway, without further ado, let's get started. All right, we have a package here from Stanley in Goodyear, Arizona. Hi to all my viewers in Arizona. He wrote on this package TI-99, and also I received this on the 4th of August. Well, at least I picked it up on the 4th of August. All right, nice. Well, I can see he has sent me some cartridges. Let's pop these out of here and take a look at what they're for. Okay, well, we have some TI-99 cartridges here. We have a Microsurgeon, and it says uses speech on the top, which is good. I have the speech synthesizer, so it'd be cool to try out a speech cartridge. We have Treasure Island, and then we have a game called Hopper, which I'm assuming is a clone of Frogger. It sounds way too similar to the premise of Frogger to not be a clone. And then we have the TI-99 football game. We have Adventure for the TI-99. I'm assuming this is not the Atari version. Solid state cartridge. I love how it says that on there, as if, it's not a tape, which there's one tape here. And then there is a Burger Time cartridge, and there's a note on the top that says bad. So that will be interesting to try to fix this one. Now, I remember him saying that some of these have screws on the bottom, and some of them have a little plastic stake that is sort of destructive when you disassemble them. So I'll be very curious to see what it's like opening these plastic stake cartridges when this bad one is one I will need to open. But it'll be interesting to see if I can fix this, because maybe there's just a contact problem or a trace that's bad. And then if anything, I can maybe use this case for one of those PCB cartridges that I got for the TI. I don't know how well those fit into standard cases. And we also have an audio cassette, and it's Pirate Adventure, and it's a Texas Instrument audio tape. Let's take a closer look at this stuff on the bench. So for testing out the cartridges that Stanley sent, I'm going to be using the TI that I repaired. So this is the one that I had the dead CPU on. To refresh everyone's memory, this beige TI was actually sent in on a mail call quite a while ago, and I think it was from an unknown source. I didn't know who sent this in. It didn't work at the time, and then the motherboard in this is what became of that 3-part TI repair series. If you haven't seen that yet, I'll put a link in the description to those videos. In the same motherboard repair series, a viewer, I think it was Stan, sent in some PCBs for cartridges and things like that, but he also sent me a new power switch and some new Alps key switches, both of which were missing on this particular computer. So this thing went back together and looks pretty much as good as new now. There was a small crack on the back of the case, which I glued together using the acetone ABS glue method a lot of my viewers have mentioned. And all that's really missing now is the 2 keycaps for this computer. It's the W key, and I think this is the function key. In my testing of this keyboard, I found that one other key switch was bad, so I also used a key switch that Stan sent to replace that one. I think it was maybe the shift key or something like that. But otherwise, this keyboard is pretty fantastic, being an Alps SKCC board. When you type on this keyboard, it has a really nice resonance sound. Listen. I love that sound, and it feels so nice. It's linear, but it feels wonderful. Okay, so it's been a little while since I did the repair. Let's see if this thing still works. Oh yes, it does. Hello, incorrect statement. So Stanley sent me this cassette, Pirate Adventure. Unfortunately, I do not have any kind of adapter to plug a cassette drive into this. I do have a nice standalone audio cassette player. I think it's from the late 70s too, so it's time appropriate for this, but I don't have the cable for the TI. So No way to test this, unfortunately. But these cartridges, on the other hand, I can test. So why don't we start with Microsurgeon, and he does uses speech on this. So I should go and grab this speech synthesis module, and it hangs off the side. But let's just see if this works first off. Okay, there it is, 2 for Microsurgeon. Enter patient number. We'll start with patient number 0. Student, I am definitely an amateur at this. So I do have one of the TI joysticks here. I actually have no idea how to play Microsurgeon. I think it's a pretty cool game and I need to learn. I see, okay, is the up, down, left, right key on the keyboard. It moves this around, so looks like that's zoomed up view. I'm like inside of the blood vessel or something like that, I guess. Or maybe not. I don't know. And then it's interesting that it uses the joystick and the keyboard, because if I push the up on the joystick, here is the TI speech synthesis module. Let me plug this into the side. Actually, the door is missing on here. I think there's normally a little door you would flip to the side to put that in, but it's missing, so it goes straight in. And of course, the color doesn't match. Do they ever make a beige speech module? Probably not, right?
Patient is ready for microsurgery, doctor.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. We're clearly inside the lung of the patient right in here. This must be like the heart or something. I guess it's the heart because we hear the breathing. Virus, it said. I was talking over it. All right, well, that's awesome. I know that the speech module works now. It's the first time I've used that. So Microsurgeon, that is all good. Next game we have is Adventure. Press any key to begin. Where is the database? Help? What am I supposed to do here? All right, well, this does seem to work. This isn't going to be an advanced playthrough of all these games. It's just going to be a quick test to see if they work. The next cartridge is Burger Time, and it does say bad on here. That causes the computer to not even start. This cartridge also doesn't have screws, so it's some kind of a plastic clasp system. I'll take this apart on a future video where I build up some of those PCB game cartridges that Sam sent me. Hopefully they'll fit inside here, like I have a Final ROM 99 PCB he sent me. I would love to build one of those up, and I hopefully can stick it inside a cartridge like this, drill a little hole here for the compact flash or SD card rather. And anyway, so yeah, bad cartridge. Thank you very much, Stanley. That is marked appropriately. Next game is Hopper. I assume is a Pac-Man clone. I'm sorry, Frogger clone. What am I saying, Pac-Man? Is that a picture of Australia, supposedly? One player? This is not a Frogger clone. Hopper as in kangaroo, right? Can I shoot? Nope. Okay, I keep dying immediately. I'm not quite sure. So I'm pushing the button and that doesn't seem to do anything. I'm obviously supposed to stay away from these bad guys and I died. All right, well, let's move on to the next game. Treasure Island. Awesome, it's working. 1983 Data East. All right, what am I supposed to do here? So one thing is, I get why when I was playing on a TI when I was a kid and my friend had one and I had a VIC-20, that I was impressed and felt that his TI was more advanced than the VIC-20 because, yeah, I'd say that these graphics, they look better than on the VIC. I mean, that's my 2 cents. People are probably going to say otherwise, fans of the VIC-20, but yeah, this game is, you know, kind of cool looking. Doesn't have much music in it, but nor did VIC-20 games for the matter. And the last game is TI Football. I was never much of a sports fan, so this will be interesting. I'm sure I will. Not only do I suck, wow, 1979. Okay, so I basically know zero about American football. And this looks like you don't control the players, you control the plays. And I guess you're playing against the AI of the computer. You're trying to beat it with the plays and stuff like that. Yeah, anyways. Well, the game works. That's awesome. So I'm sorry I didn't play through these games further, but on a mail call, I just don't really have time. I just need to make sure that they work. Mark them as appropriate, which Stanley already did. And then hopefully in the future, I will do more of a TI deep dive retrospective kind of thing where I actually play some of these games. So thank you so much, Stanley, for sending this stuff in. I really appreciate it. These cartridges will come in very handy for me to test the console capability to make sure the machine is working like the fact that it's running this game properly, Microsurgeon, implies to me that this one was repaired successfully. So thanks very much. Thumbs up. Okay, we have a package here from Nathaniel in California, and I got this on August the 4th. So it's actually August. It's the same month I'm opening these packages for once. Now, when you'll see this video, I'm not quite so sure. Hopefully, it's also in August. We got packing peanuts. Try not to make a huge mess. I'm going to grab the trash can. Let's tip these out. Those were the non-biodegradable type, the ones made out of styrofoam. All right, we got some anti-static bags here. And I think just more peanuts. All right, so let's take a look. I think what we have here are Apple II cards. Yeah, so this is the Apple IIe 80 column 64K RAM card / video card. It's amazing how simple this card is. It's just got 8 RAM chips and 2 74 logic chips. And this upgrades your 2E to 128K and gives it the ability to display 80 columns mode. And then the other bag, let's see what's in here. Oh, right. Okay. It's a TI-99 game cartridge. It's called Beginning Grammar. I still don't have any TI-99 game cartridges to test the thing with. Now, I did get some PCBs that were sent in by a viewer that I used some other parts during my repair-a-thon, so I need to build those things up. I've actually ordered some parts so I can build those, but I'm waiting on parts from China on those. So for now, with something like this, I can actually try out the TI-99. Now we'll just take a quick look at these on the bench. So I'm not really going to test the Apple IIe 80 column / 64K RAM expansion card on a 2E. It's not really much to see on this thing. It's so simple. It's just 64K of RAM, a couple 74 LS logic chips, and that's it. Without this, though, your Apple IIe will not have the RAM expansion and won't be able to display 80 columns. So it's always useful to have one of these around in case I end up with a 2E machine that doesn't have one. I can pop this in, and then I can have 80 columns and the extra RAM. But Nathaniel also sent along this TI-99 cartridge, Beginning Grammar. So this I can test. Of course, here is the beige TI-99, and let's give this Beginning Grammar cartridge a try. Hey, that's pretty cute. And the date there was 1978 that was showing. Quite impressive. It just reminds you how old the TI is really when it came out versus its contemporary. It's not really fair to compare this to, say, Commodore 64, which came out in 1982. But it is fair to compare it more to an Apple II, for instance. And this definitely has better color graphics capability than the Apple II. At least it has sprites and multi-channel sound, right? So this is an edutainment title, obviously from that era. I'm going to turn down the volume here because we don't really need to hear this. But going places with nouns. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to see here. So let's see. How nouns are used. Yes, the girl, Boston, cake, those are all nouns. There's the noun and if it's person, thing, or not a noun. I didn't actually look to see how to move this around, so I can't really play this game. But hey, it's nice that this cartridge does work. I let this time out and it says press aid to see instructions or clear to type word or redo or enter. Those keys, are they actually marked on this keyboard or is there some kind of a little overlay or something you place on the keyboard? There probably is that came with this cartridge to help you play it. And I don't have that, so I don't even know what these key combinations are. So cool, thanks very much Nathaniel for sending this stuff in. This card here has Apple branded RAM. So I might pillage this one day for use somewhere else. You never know when I might need to fix something. But and then an extra TI cartridge for more testing of consoles like this one. So sweet. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. Well, the next package, it's in a Blue Apron box, and there's no from address on here. So I actually don't know who sent this in. I'm all about the idea of reusing packing materials, though. So if you are a Blue Apron subscriber, they deliver food to your house. It's great to reuse these boxes. And in fact, anytime viewers send me stuff that has bubble wrap sheets in there, I always keep that stuff because you never know when I'm going to need to wrap stuff up. And actually, even just when I have machines that I'm stacking up and storing, I just don't like to put one computer directly on top of another. So I actually lay a couple sheets of bubble wrap. Okay, well, there's a note in here, and it is from Matt. And he says, greetings from Seattle. Enclosed is a semi-functional TI-99 silver computer for spare parts. I no longer have any TI stuff, but when I did, it had some corrupted characters when powered on. Speaking of powering on, you might want to open this up and check it all out before applying power. I hastily reassembled this, and I'm not even 100% sure it went back together correctly. And he goes on to say, hopefully this unit has some spare parts you can use to get another unit working, or maybe you want to fix this one as a spare. Thanks for the always entertaining and informative videos on retro gear, Matt. So this TI is very nicely packed. There's definitely no chance of damage, even though this was a machine that was non-functional potentially. All right, here we go. A really, really clean, this thing looks perfect. It's a really clean TI-99 4A. Seemingly like all of the silver ones, you end up with tiny little dents in the aluminum top. Just very fragile. Like, you know, if I accidentally dropped this knife on there, it would scratch and dent the top really easily. All right, so that's really cool. Let's take a look at this on the bench. Would you just look at this nice silver TI-99 that Matt sent in? Both of my other units don't have this sticker here that says solid state software. Now I take it this is a sticker and it peels off. Maybe the previous owners of the other ones peeled that off. On first blush, this thing just looks amazing. I mean, I don't even see any blemishes. Although on closer inspection, there's oddly these little miniature dents all the way along the edge here. So I wonder what caused that particular problem. Although it's funny, when you're standing in front of the computer looking down on it, you don't really notice these. And I am noticing on the side here where the speech module would go, there should be a little door. That appears to be missing, but hey, whatever. And Matt did mention that he hastily assembled this, and I'm noticing here that the case is all sort of bulged up and the power switch is oddly on the inside as opposed to the outside. So I need to take this thing apart and fix that. So let's take this apart. I hope everyone enjoys my 60s or /70s towel here that I'm using to protect the machine. If you don't recall one of my previous videos, I think I talked about this towel. I just randomly found this towel lying on top of my trash can after I had put it out for trash collection one weekend. And it was wintertime and it was raining. So I just took the towel, put it in the laundry. I washed it a couple times. And now I use it to put down on my desk if I'm taking apart an old computer like this, especially one that has that very fragile metal top where I don't want to scratch it. And yeah, this thing is so ugly, but I kind of love it at the same time. Okay, I'm noticing that screw is missing. And this one here, let's take this one out. Oops. And this one here is spinning freely. That looks like it's a little bit too short than it should be. Oh, this thing just popped apart. So it was missing a screw here and one of the two here. No big deal. Well, there it is. All looks good. And the power switch is luckily here, so that's not missing. I can see why TI wanted to do a cost-reduced version of this thing. It's pretty complicated just with all these parts and stuff like the internal power supply and all these little complicated standoffs, and just the fact that the power switch is like these two extra parts and a toggle switch. Like, why so unnecessarily complicated? All right, I think all the screws should be out. So this should all lift out now. Yep, it does. So the keyboard here is, okay, I don't know what brand this is. It's definitely not Alps. Definitely feels pretty mushy. And not to mention when you push the corners on the edges, right, like on this corner of the T here, it binds really badly. So it is really funny to me that there was such a variance in keyboard quality, like where some were using Alps SKCC, which is like such a high quality keyboard. And then you have stuff like this that just really feels crappy. Now, Matt did tell me that this machine is faulty, and I'm not going to be doing a repair in this video. I just want to power it up to see what the fault is. We'll do a motherboard repair in a future video for this machine. Now, I noticed right off the bat the 9918 video chip, here's the heatsink thing that goes on there, doesn't have any heatsink compound. Now, Matt must have taken this apart in the past, and that's been cleaned off. I mean, I'm assuming that that would have been there from the factory. Yeah, I can see residue of that heatsink compound on both the chip and this. Now, I will also add that while this chip runs pretty warm, it doesn't seem to run any hotter than, say, like a SID chip in a Commodore 64. So ideally, you want to run some kind of heatsink on it, or, you know, obviously keep the RF shield with that paste on there probably helps. But it's okay to run this for a while, or a little while at least, without any heat sinking whatsoever on this thing. The motherboard is the standard TI-994A version. There is a later kind of cost-reduced, or I don't know, it's called the QI version, and the chips are in different orientations. Essentially, that one seems to be in mostly the beige later machines. It also seems to incorporate some changes that prevent counterfeit cartridges from working, and potentially homebrew cartridges as well. Although I think the final Grom 99, whatever that cartridge is called, does work on all versions of this board, including the QI. But this is not the QI, this is just the regular one, so it's the more compatible one. All right, so it's plugged into the TV. Matt said that there were weird characters on the screen. Let's turn this on and see what we get. Oh yeah, that doesn't look right. Let's see if it's operating normally. It does. It's trying to say there's one for basic there. If I hit one, it's going into basic, but yeah, we're getting some crap there. Let's try a cartridge. There's a little angled circuit board here for the cartridge, so I'm going to use that. There we go. I'm putting in Microsurgeon, and let's see what happens. Same garbage. Let's push 2 for the game. And yeah, certainly corrupted. I'm not sure the game is actually running either. It doesn't appear to be responding to the keyboard pushes. So cool, this machine needs repair. So everyone, you'll see this machine in the future for another TI-9 repair. Thanks, Matt, for sending this in. Okay, next up, we have a package here that comes from eBay. So the address on here actually has nothing to do with the person who bought this and sent it to me. He bought and had this drop shipped to me and clued me into what it was through email. And of course, I know that this is that package because I saw the shipping address of where it came from, where the eBay item came from. So it's not a surprise as to what this is. Let me show you, the viewer, what this is. All right, so what we have here are some SideQuest cartridges. Awesome. We have 3 88 megabyte SideQuest cartridges. I recently did that mail call video where I showed off the 88 meg SideQuest drive that a different viewer sent me. And these are the cartridges that that particular drive uses. Now, after that video, I had a lot of viewers write in to say that they had cartridges and they wanted to send me them. Now, if you've gone ahead and sent me some cartridges, don't worry. These things don't take up that much space, and it's nice to have a good amount because these definitely go bad. So let's go take a closer look at these on the bench and do a quick test to see if these work. So I have the Stealth Mac Classic 2 set up with the SideQuest 88 megabyte drive I was sent in on a previous mail call. And these are the 3 cartridges that Carrie sent to me from eBay. Thank you very much. Let's give one of these a try in this SideQuest drive. The SideQuest drive is being detected on ID number 3, and I'm using Silver Lining to do a validation, like a test, and then I can format these cartridges as well. You don't really need to use special software for SideQuest because it literally says removable hard disk cartridge, because this thing does just show up as a removable hard drive to the computer. Inside the storage cases are just these clear plastic containers. Sorry, I'm struggling to get these off on camera. So inside there is actually a hard drive platter. This is not a floppy disk in here. It's literally spinning rust. It's a hard drive platter. So the drive is powered up. Let's just slide this in. And you gotta flip that over. It doesn't go all the way. And then we have a flashing amber light. It spins up. Now we should get a green LED if all is working well. Okay, so that's not a good sign. We're getting a flashing green LED. The screensaver After Dark kicked in on the Mac Classic, and it's cool. It actually lowers the brightness of the screen because this thing is a monochrome computer, but if I move the mouse, watch, it actually brightens the screen back up. Because the Classic and the Classic 2 actually have PWM control of the screen brightness, things like screensavers are actually able to dim the screen, and it's like a physical dimming of the screen, which actually does prolong life. Okay, let's pick the SideQuest cartridge, hit OK. Let's see what this says. The SideQuest drive is attempting to access right now. It's making clickety-click noises. Uh-oh. Unable to reliably access the disk. Check the termination. Well, I do have the drive terminated. I have the DB25 250 pin going to the ribbon cable, which is plugged into a little terminator circuit board on the back of the drive, which is then connected to the drive. This drive does not have built-in termination. It has a weird little terminator pack, kind of 4 rows or 3 rows of pins that are very close together. I'm not sure if I can stick in normal terminating resistors, the manual shows a single block plugging into that. So I use the inline type that's on the ribbon cable. Well, let's do test. It's accessing the drive again. I'll do short test. Interesting, it spun down the drive and it's spinning back up again. That must be part of the self-test mechanism that's built into the SideQuest drive. And it's attempting a seek test right now and it's getting just tons of errors. And the amber LED is flashing on here, but I don't hear any attempt at doing any seeks. Hit the button for that. So now it's trying to do reads, and that's also just erroring out, and that gave an error. So let's just try formatting the cartridge. Interleave 1. It's attempting to do something. Formatting, error 1. Okay, it immediately aborted. Well, let's just try these other two cartridges. This one mightn't be bad. I don't think the eBay listing showed that these were verified good or anything. But there's two possibilities, right? There's a possibility that these cartridges are no good, but there's also a possibility that the drive is no good. Okay, here's cartridge number 2. All right, well, let's cancel out of this and go back to selecting that disc because there's a new platter in there. Look, it's doing the same thing where the green light is just slowly blinking. Incidentally, it's not blinking any kind of blink code. This just blinks at this rate indefinitely. And same exact error. Darn it. And we're getting exactly the same errors here on the seek test and the read test, identical. And we'll do the format test. Well, it's not a test, it's just a format. And it errored out in exactly the same way. Oops, I didn't mean to click that button. Incidentally, I noticed that these two have slightly different labels. This says 88 megabytes in a teal color, and this one just says it in a white color. Let's go to the third cartridge, and this one has the teal color label. Interesting, it didn't even detect the drive this time. Was there a rescan? Let's exit and go back in. The drive is doing exactly the same thing with the green slow flash on the LED. I am not holding out hope that this is going to work. Same error. I looked online to find the manual for this unit, and I wasn't able to find it, only the one for the 44 megabyte version, the older one. And I couldn't find any mention in the manual for the 44 meg one what slow flashing green LED means. There are various blink codes with the two LEDs, but nothing pointing to what this thing is doing specifically. There is a jumper block back here, and there's an ABC jumper, a T, and a P jumper. Now it looks like the T jumper has to do with a test mode, and you set that along with an ID on here, and that puts this drive into a self-test mode. I did play around with those based on information in the manual for the 44 meg drive, but none of the tests seem to coincide with what it talked about. It sort of makes the drive just do a whole lot of seeking and sort of repeatedly. It doesn't seem to do anything else. And I'm not sure what the P jumper does. Maybe that has to do with termination power. It would probably be explained in the manual for this unit if I could find it. And there is a warranty void sticker if removed here, and it is not broken. So I don't think anyone has ever been inside this drive. If anyone has experience with these 88 meg drives and recognizes the symptoms of what might be wrong here, please let me know in the comment section below. And thank you very much, Carrie, for sending me in these 3 cartridges. I'm really sorry that I couldn't get this working. Okay, I have a really large package here. It's not the largest package I've got a mail call, but it's definitely probably in the top 10. It comes from David in, it looks like Creston, California. Hi to all my California viewers. That's the state just south of Oregon where I live. Let's see, we got a letter here from David. The box looks a little crushed up, but he has lots of packing material in here, so I am sure whatever's in here is probably fine. Well, on the top layer here, I'm seeing stuff for the Macintosh. We have a power supply for an Apple laptop, one of the early ones. Actually, I think this is the right voltage to potentially work on the Mac Portable. Some people may have spotted it sitting down on the floor over by my furnace. I haven't gotten around to trying to repair that thing, but it didn't come with a power supply, and this is, I think, the right power supply for that. We have, at least on the top here, a couple more phone nut adapters. And then here, this looks like one of those Logitech hand scanners, and it's kind of a Macintosh-based one because I think it's SCSI interface. I've always been sort of interested in these, and I think I have another one for the 2GS that has an Apple II card. So that'll be interesting to look at. I'm gonna move this on the floor. This little box that was inside the big box. Looks like we got some more SideQuest cartridges. 88 megabytes, another 88 megabyte one, and then just some packing peanuts. SCSI Terminator. Let's take this stuff out here. Okay, so this looks like an Apple IIe floppy drive. Yeah, this is one of those Apple 5.25-inch disk drives. Now, this one appears to be a decent shape. These have Alps mechanisms inside, so they're relatively reliable. Okay, so this is a PCI card. Also wrapped up in there is another SCSI card, an ISA Adaptec SCSI card, 16 bits. And this has a BIOS and it has a floppy controller. That means that with this in there, I could actually like use a zip drive to boot a DOS PC. So that's kind of neat, actually. I don't have anything like this. Okay, and here seems to be an interesting assortment of stuff. So I'm not 100% sure what this is. We'll take a closer look in a second. But this appears to be a VGA card and an EISA bus. EISA bus card. And then we have what looks like an Adaptec MFM ISA controller. And then what I'm presuming is an ISA CGA card. And then something that I have to say I've never seen. Looks like a network card. I think it's got 10BASE-T and coax, but it's got a PCI connector on one end and an ISA connector on the other. What? Looks like this module here with the interfaces, you take it out and flip it around. And of course, it would originally have the backplate to screw in the computer, so you'd have to take this out and flip it over so you could get this ISA and PCI card in a PC. That's very unusual. Oh, this is just awesome. Look at this. So he's also sent a Macintosh SE motherboard. Unknown if this works or not. These metal clips are a little bent up, but looks okay otherwise. And in the bottom here is a PC motherboard. Let's try to get this plastic off. Is a PC motherboard. This is a 486. It's got a Cyrix processor, 46 DLC. It's got 3 local bus slots, 32-bit slots, a giant socket here, which I don't know if this is for some kind of Pentium overdrive kind of thing. It's got a lot of pins on it, cache memory, and got 8 30-pin memory sockets. And what I see that's really exciting is the battery's been removed and it hasn't leaked. Well, at least not on first appearance. How neat. But we're not done. There's more stuff. This was inside that box. Let's look at what goodies lie within here. Ah, yes, I can tell what this is. This is obviously the Macintosh that goes with that power supply. PowerBook 150, and I assume because it doesn't have a C, I saw the label on the bottom, it means it's not color. Well, yeah, this machine, it's had a hard life, so to speak. It's very broken. Something very traumatic happened to this computer at some point that kind of broke the screen off, and the hinges are snapped right off the top cover, but the bottom is actually in okay shape. Let's check out the note that David sent. He says, "Hi, I've included the SideQuest disc you requested along with an assortment of miscellaneous items I think will be interesting or helpful. Most of the items I was able to save from being recycled back in 2000 from my old high school. After watching your Macintosh repair series, I was determined to find my SE30 and get it up and running. Back in the day, I maxed it out and got it running on the internet. During my hunt, I happened across the SideQuest discs. I was very close to tossing them because the drive had failed. But keep up the good work, David." All right, so let's take a closer look at this stuff on the bench. So I've jumped right into testing and I've already figured out a couple things, some of which are a bit unfortunate. So the motherboard appears to be absolutely working fine. Now, unfortunately, it came with this Cyrix 46 DLC chip, 40 megahertz. What this is, it's a 46 compatible processor that plugs into 386 motherboards. Well, this chip, unfortunately, is bad. I tried powering this motherboard up and it was just absolutely acting dead. And this CPU was getting extremely hot. Now, I've never used one of these, so I didn't know if that's normal or not, but just for fun, I stuck a regular 386 DX25 in here. I set the jumpers to 25 megahertz. And now if I power on this computer, it works absolutely perfectly. There it is, powered up pretty much instantly. It came with 8 megabytes of RAM, all of which works. I took 4 of them out to test on something else. This is the video card that David sent along, and it's a CGA card. It appears to work fine. This is the MFM hard drive controller that he sent along. This is an Adaptec ACB 2010-A, or something around that model number. I was able to luckily find the instructions for this for configuring the jumpers and whatnot. And then finally, these two cards. This is an XT IDE, and this is a post card. Shows the BIOS post codes. Helped me diagnose that the CPU was dead on this thing. So I haven't plugged an MFM hard drive into the Adaptec card yet, but it definitely seems like that card is not working. And the reason why I say that is because taking a look at C800, there's nothing here. And reading the instructions, it says that there is supposed to be a ROM BIOS here, which you can execute, of course, to format the hard drive and stuff like that. And I think without that BIOS, I don't think this card's going to work. Now, looking at the card here, the BIOS chip, I think, is right here. There's another chip over here, which according to the instructions is called firmware. But this one here, according to the instructions, is called BIOS, and the chip is just gone. So if anyone knows if the BIOS chip does indeed go here, and maybe they have this Adaptec ACB 2010A card, if they could dump this BIOS and send it to me, then I can probably get this card working. It looks to be in okay shape otherwise. I straightened out a couple bent capacitors on here and a few jumper pins, which were also shorting, but everything looks okay physically on this board. It just looks like it was stacked up in a dusty environment. There's quite a bit of cobweb dust and stuff on here, but probably works. Here's the Adaptec ISA SCSI card that he sent along. Looks like an AHA 1522B, like beta. Popping this card in here. This does appear to work. Maybe I spoke too soon because it doesn't seem to be seeing the card anymore. Let me pull out the XT IDE card and see if it could boot without this in here. Was definitely seeing the Adaptec card before. Oh, there we go, Adaptec SCSI. So Control A for the SCSI BIOS. There it is. Pretty nice. It has software IRQ control. You can enable DMA as well for speeding up. It is a 16-bit ISA card. You can change the SCSI ID. You can enable and disable the SCSI termination. And these are the typical configuration options for each of the SCSI IDs that are connected to the host adapter. Now you may be noticing when I go in and out of these options here, you'll see a little bit of static on screen. That's this CGA adapter. It's not a fault. This is just a clone of the very early IBM CGA adapters, and that's exactly how those worked as well. Later CGA adapters introduced what I guess like faster memory on the card or dual ported memory that could allow the computer to write to that RAM and the CRTC controller to also read from it at the same time. And that would avoid this snow, supposedly. I'm assuming that this doesn't work with this in here is because the BIOS address is DC100, and this is probably configured here to be at the same address space as the SCSI card. Let's take a closer look at this motherboard here up close so everyone can see what this looks like. Like I mentioned earlier, this is definitely an oddball motherboard, something I've just never seen before. Local bus slots, cache memory. There's also some cache memory here, a single chip. It's got an Opti chipset, 8 30-pin memory slots, lots of 16-bit slots. The battery's already been removed from the board. Luckily, there's absolutely no corrosion, so that's quite sweet. This is the socket here for the regular 386DX type chip, and it looks like what this might be is a combination socket that supports not only a 387, which would only occupy this part of the socket, but this larger part here would be for a 486 chip, like a full-on 486DX chip. What I'm not totally sure about is if these local bus slots work with the 386 or they require the 486DX to be installed in here. There are tons of jumpers to change when you switch between the processor types. Luckily, it is silk-screened on here what jumpers you have to change, although the jumpers are spread all around the motherboard, so they're not super easy to find. But to check that first CPU that wasn't working, I did go through and double check that everything was set for 386, and it was. And then I switched the processor with an Intel 36DX16, or 25 megahertz rather, and this thing just came right up. So definitely that other CPU is bad. Other than the silkscreen markings that are on this board, there really aren't any brand names anymore on here. There was a warranty sticker there, and there's one on the processor here. And it says T.W. right there. That's the only thing that maybe is kind of a brand name, but that just might be Taiwan as well for where this thing is made. If anyone has thoughts about this Strivix processor, please let me know, but it absolutely looks fine. There's no problems with the pins or anything like that. And the warranty sticker was still attached over the chip down to the motherboard. So this thing had never been removed from this processor. It was installed in here whenever these warranty stickers were first stuck on here. This is the CGA card. It does say CG-100 Rev 5 right there. Made in Taiwan, and a QC OK sticker here. There are two RCA jacks here, which is a little odd because I'm pretty sure that the CGA card only actually has one there for composite video. I don't know what the difference is with the two here. And there are some pin headers here as well that I don't know what they do exactly. Probably a light pen, maybe something like that. Here's the Adaptec card. Looks like it's from 1996, so it's kind of late in the game for ISA cards. On the back here, it does have a little chart that shows you how to adjust the dip switches. That's pretty handy. So I'm just going to change that base I/O so I can put the XT IDE back in and test this out. The BIOS on this motherboard is just a normal AMI BIOS from around this early 90s time frame. Nothing particularly different or interesting. Got lots of ROM shadow options in here. Turbo switch, you can disable the turbo switch. That's kind of interesting. It has IDE block transfer modes that speeds up the IDE bus. It has some advanced settings for the chipset where you can control the AT bus clock speed, for instance, single ALE enable, hidden refresh. You can control the memory read and write wait states and also the cache read and write wait states. So if you put some fast memory in this, you can get some additional performance out of the old 386 that's on here. There's a power management section here which just shows device 1 through 5 timeout, and then you can set the time between 1 and 255 minutes. So what does exactly that do? I got no idea. I have a Quantum SCSI hard drive hooked up here, and it does work fine. It should show up here. There it is, Quantum Fireball, or whatever this thing is, 40 megabytes. I did successfully format it in DOS, although I can't make it bootable because I have to switch it around to be drive 0 due to FDisk's limitation on making an active partition. But it did format and copy everything over. Look at that snow on the boot menu here. It shows up foreign hard drive, 40 megabytes, so that's it. But if I can boot off the compact flash card, and then I can see the SCSI hard drive and completely use it and everything. I'm just testing the composite RCA output on the CGA card, and it's the lower of the two that is the composite output, which is what you see there. I noticed some weird fringing occasionally on some of the text, and it's actually visible on the composite output as well, especially on the gray. See all this sort of jittering right here? The color output is also quite poor on this card. I'm thinking there's probably a slight fault on this card, something that's just out of tolerance ever so slightly. Maybe the SRAM or the CRTC controller, which is this larger IC here. It does appear to work fine, but it's just that little bit of weird fringing that's on this sometimes. I'm lucky to have other CGA cards. This is not the only one I have, so the fact that this one's not quite working perfectly is not that big of a deal. Here is the PCI TechRAM SCSI card. I did quickly test this out, and it seems to work fine. It's missing the back plate. It doesn't have drivers for Windows 10, unfortunately, but it works absolutely fine in older machines. Here's the eISA VGA card. This is actually a compact part, and judging by the unusual height of this, I'm wondering if this is from like a 386 portable. The cards that go into portable machines appear to have higher normal height than a standard ISA slot, but if you recognize this card, let me know in the comment section where this might come from, but I definitely don't have any kind of eISA motherboards, so I have no way to test this thing. eISA slots were backwards compatible with regular ISA. That's this top row of contacts here. But this lower row here means you can't just plug this into a standard ISA slot. That does not work. The ESA slots were an upgrade over the old ISA 16-bit slots, as it gave you 32-bit interface to the CPU. So it was first introduced on 386s, at least as far as I'm aware. And here's this unusual network card, which appears to be a 10BASE-T card that has both ISA 8-bit and a PCI slot in it. So it looks like you could install this on either direction into whatever motherboard you had, and then what you had to do is you had to pop this little card out here, like so, and then you would flip it around. Now originally this had the slot cover to screw into your computer, which is why you had to flip this around, because when you put it in this way, the little bracket had to be up here, and when you flipped it this way, the bracket had to be here. So you had to swap this around. Here's the main chip, DCA. I don't really recognize this. It says DCA on the silkscreen there. I've never seen a card like this. So if you have any experience with cards like this and happen to know the exact model number and maybe if there's drivers for this thing, let me know in the comment section below. Nothing much to report on these two phone net adapters. This one here is generic. It doesn't even have any branding whatsoever. Bottom just has a couple patent numbers, but it's pretty standard. It's just run-of-the-mill mini DIN to 2 phone jacks. And then this very yellowed one here is a Farallon phone net adapter, an actual branded one. But yeah, I have a bunch of these now. So it's handy. I'm going to put this in the box with the rest of my AppleTalk stuff. Anyone want to place their bets on if this PowerBook 150 actually works? I mean, it might still work even in this very, very kind of broken condition here. Now, the LCD does not appear to be cracked. There's a little bit of hair there. Just the plastic that was holding this thing together is completely broken. The hinges here are intact, but it's sheared off completely. So The keyboard is fully intact. Now the space bar was off when I took it out of the thing, but it did just pop right back on. Luckily the spring hadn't flown away. It was still sort of sitting in there. The track pole was also out, but I just put that in. This does appear to work fine. Now these often get very dirty and don't work very well, so you have to very carefully take this thing apart and clean that inside. You can kind of get an idea here of what's happening here. It looks like the clip that holds the case together is still intact, just needs to be pushed together. This side has its the little rotating foot thing on here without issue, but at the other side, the little rotating foot thing has just snapped right off. Floppy drive is there and hopefully not busted. The back looks okay, although the phone jack here is completely smashed, or I don't know what happened here. It's missing. I don't think I have anything to lose on this thing. I'm going to plug this thing in. Let's see if it even turns on. Whoa, it just powered itself up. Okay, that's pretty amazing. Let's see about these brightness and contrast controls. It's booting. It's actually booting. You can hear the hard drive going. There does appear to be no life on the LCD though. Neither of these controls are doing anything at all. It does appear that the backlight power supply for the cold cathode fluorescent tubes in this is in the computer itself. So the cables just go inside, so that might be failed. Now what's sad about the PowerBook 150 is it doesn't have video output on it. So there's really no way for me to get a working display on this thing, even though it just seems like it's finished booting up and it worked. There's no way to plug something into it externally. There's only a SCSI port on the back and an ADB port for an external keyboard. I disassembled the top cover for easier storage. Now the front bezel, it looks pretty fine on that side. It looks like there were probably little standoffs or something here, and those are snapped. They're just missing altogether. Also, I see there's some clips around the perimeter, and that one's broken, and potentially more as well. But from this side, it does look okay. The original latch is still intact. Here's the LCD panel, and this does appear to be intact. I don't see any breaks inside the glass. It's made by Casio. Not quite sure why the backlight wasn't working, if the fluorescent tube is broken inside of here or it's just burned out. These don't usually burn out, they just get dim, but there was no activity whatsoever. And here's the top cover of the lid, and the outside looks fine. It's actually in pretty good shape, but inside there's definitely some carnage. So here's where the standoffs were at the bottom, where the hinges connected. They're all completely ripped off. And then there's also a standoff there for the screen that's missing. The three other ones are intact. I think I'm going to salvage these Apple logos. I have a keyboard that's missing its Apple logo, and I think it's the same size as this, so this will be a perfect replacement for that. Plus, this top cover is made out of ABS. Be good for me to break it down, grind it down, and I can make that ABS slurry using acetone for trying to repair other things that are broken, like C64 cases. And here's the lidless Mac, and just like I said, the hinges here appear to be fine. I took all the screws out. Oh, I didn't take this one screw out. But they seem okay, and so do these wires. They don't seem damaged at all. So theoretically, this thing could be used with a different screen. Although it looks like to change the screen, I think you have to take all the clips out from around the edge of the screen, which might break it. And people may have more experience in repairing these than me. Like I mentioned before, though, I have a PowerBook 165C, which does work, and I figured that this machine would be good as a parts donor for that thing if it ever needed service, especially for stuff like the keyboard and whatnot. Apple 5¼ disk drive. These were very common for use on the Apple IIe, but they work on the Apple IIc as well. So I'm just gonna plug it in here. Incidentally, this Apple IIc was one that I washed in the dishwasher. And when I did that, this thing was extremely yellow. Well, I've since retrobrighted this thing, and the process worked amazingly well. This thing looks pretty much brand new again. And there was a rubber membrane under the keyboard that I put back in after I washed the keyboard, and it felt really mushy. Well, I've since taken the keys off, pulled the horrible membrane off, and put it back together. And while this is not the Alps keyboard, this keyboard feels pretty good now. It's still kind of mushy feeling. It's not as good as the Alps, but without that silly membrane there, it is a million times better. All right, let's turn this on, see if this thing can boot to this external drive. I have ROM 4X in this 2C, so I can boot to the external drive. Let's hit it and just see if we hear the C key noise at least. Yeah, okay, that sounded normal. Let's try one more time. Listen. Sounds absolutely normal. Before I stick a real disc in here, I want to clean it, and I have my cleaning disc. Now, people pointed out in one of my previous videos that if I'm doing a single-sided drive like this, I shouldn't have this pad open here, because basically there's a little felt pad inside the drive, and it rubs on the cleaning disc, which maybe isn't good for it. So what I'm going to do is take this bad floppy disk here, I'm going to cut a section of it out here, and I'm going to tape this over this area here when I'm using it in single-sided mode, which is most of the time. And then I can peel it off if I'm going to use this in a double-sided drive. I'm going to say this is going to be good enough for now. I might try again with an X-Acto blade to cut a piece that fits exactly inside of that little spot there, but I'm not sure. This is probably totally fine. So I'm going to format this disk in the internal drive, and then I'm going to do a full verify on the external drive to make sure it can read this properly. Now this freshly formatted disk goes into this external drive, hit space to verify. Looking good. We're getting all dots, which means verifying correctly. Thumbs up, that verified perfectly. This Apple 5¼ drive appears to work wonderfully. This is the Mac SE motherboard. I installed 4 megs of memory in it that were on the 386/46 board, so I know this RAM works. It worked fine in there, so I'm just stuck it in here. It is parity RAM, which I don't think the SE uses it, but it should work with the parity memory installed. Not much to report on this board. It looks totally fine. Has the Varda still, so I'm going to cut that out. I don't want that to leak. The Mac SE does not use surface mount caps that leak. It does have electrolytics here, but these traditionally don't leak, so there's no problem with damage on this board. It's funny that the older Mac boards are going to be more reliable than the SE30 and the newer ones. Back of the board looks totally fine, as does the top. These little bracket things here are a little bent, but that's no big deal. These are very easy to bend back into position. So let's plug this into this Mac SE chassis here and see if this works. I have no reason to believe that this won't work perfectly. Before I do anything though, this Varta goes bye-bye. Incidentally, it's made in West Germany, which makes sense. The date codes on all the chips on this motherboard are from 1988. So this was from before the fall of the Berlin Wall. This has lithium in it, so you should put this in e-waste or battery recycling. You shouldn't just throw this in the garbage. It all looks a little precarious, but I do have the SCSI cable connected to the motherboard and a power cord. I'm just going to plug an ADB mouse and keyboard into here for the full test. Here's my ADB keyboard with the missing Apple logo, and I think it's the same size as the one off the PowerBook lid. So I'm going to steal it off this, use a little heat, pop it on there for a nicer looking keyboard. And it's pretty easy to remove that logo. You just apply a little heat to the front and back, and there's a little hole on the plastic. You can just pop it out. Let's see if this goes into this little spot. Look at that. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And ready for power up. The speaker is not hooked up, so there will be no bong or dong or any sounds like that. But let's see if we get a good gray screen. We have the good gray screen. It's doing the memory check right now. 4 megabytes of RAM on these old 68000s, 8 megahertz. Takes a little bit of time, but hey, there we go. There's the mouse, and it's booting. Mac SE, that's the hard drive that was already in this computer, and 4 megabytes of RAM, thumbs up. That was an easy test. That's one working Mac SE motherboard. I love it. And this is a SCSI for the Macintosh hand scanner. These are something that are probably lost to time, and my younger viewers may not recognize this thing. On the bottom it shows here that it's the Logitech ScanMan. Back in the day, flatbed scanners, the ones that could do a full-size piece of paper, they were pretty expensive. So things like this came out, which were designed for scanning things on a smaller scale, and they were significantly cheaper. This one's called the Logitech ScanMan, and you can see here, this is the sensor, and then there's a roller here that can sense you moving this across the page. On the side of the unit is a button, and you would hold this with your thumb to engage the scan function. This would be like an intensity level, or maybe the resolution, I'm not quite sure. And I think this is sort of like the brightness or contrast knob. And on the other side here, there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, so maybe that's the resolution. The hand scanner here plugs into the front of this box, which just says Logitech. And interesting, they copied Apple's design pretty much to a T. And on the bottom it says ScanMan for Mac. This thick cable here plugged into the SCSI port on your Mac, and it had a pass-through SCSI port, a way to set the ID, and then a power input connector, and it looks like it says AC 12 volts. Unfortunately, I have no 12-volt AC power supplies kicking around, so I can't immediately test this thing, not to mention I need the software and whatnot for it. But the way this works is you load up your scanning software, or potentially Photoshop with the right drivers to use this. You would lay your piece of paper down, or maybe a book, and you would take this, put it on the top of the page, and you'd hold this, and then you would slowly roll it down the page. Now you had to roll it perfectly straight, and you also had to roll at a certain speed. If you went too fast, it would start losing the signal. So it took quite a bit of a steady hand to just slowly roll like this across the page. Now this is not the width of a full page, so this would require at least 2 passes. But the software was designed to take 2 passes like this and meld them together into a full page scan. These just didn't work very well. Nah, some of these were monochrome. I know they had color ones later, but I had one of these for a little while and I hated that thing. These were just a transition stage while those flatbed scanners got super duper cheap, and they just never worked that well. So I will be curious to try this out. I'm going to have to try to find a power supply for it and the original drivers, just so I can show everyone and remind myself how not so good these are. Now, if you've had experience with these and you have positive or negative feelings about it, I'd love to hear your comments about it in the comment section below. And lastly, there are 2 SideQuest 88 megabyte cartridges. This one has the word empty written in here, but it's an 88 meg cart. And this other one here is also an 88 meg cart. The case is kind of falling apart. Now, unfortunately, as you've seen already in a mail call video, the SideQuest drive that I got from a different mail call doesn't read any disk properly. Just for fun, I tried these 2 out in that drive, and it also does not read properly. So I think the drive is bad. I just can't believe that all of the SideQuest cartridges that I got don't work. So that's everything that David sent in. Huge thumbs up for all the cool stuff. I really appreciate you mailing this stuff in for mail call. All right, that's going to be it for this mail call video. If you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate a thumbs up. But if you didn't like this video, you know what to do. You can hit that thumbs down button. It helps me out a lot if you hit that subscribe button to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. And of course, the notification icon where you may hopefully get notified by Google if they so feel like doing it. But most of the time that doesn't work. So what can you do? Put your comments and your suggestions in the comment section below. And that's going to be it. Thanks very much for watching. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.